Dialogue. It's a critical part of world building, and it's crucial to a lot of indie games. Being an indie developer allows you a complete sense of freedom when it comes to tailoring stories exactly to your unique vision. Yet with this sense of freedom, a lot of indie developers want to jump into dialogue too soon. Only after creating their game will a lot of indie developers think about localization, and at that point, it's too late. Hi, I'm McNeal, and over the last month, I've been working on importing localization strategies into my system for dialogue. But before we get into that, I would just like to ask that you consider subscribing to the channel. Today, we just hit 3,000 subs. I can't believe it. Thank you guys so much. I was happy back when we got to 100 subs, and 3,000 is just blowing my mind. So I'd just like to thank you all, and for everybody that's not subscribed, consider subscribing, and if not, just give this video a great big thumbs up. It'll really help me out with the YouTube algorithm. Now let's get into this. So the first thing that you probably want to do when you're developing any kind of dialogue system is have an idea of how the dialogue is going to be presented on screen. So this was just a mock-up that I created, and before I did anything, before I wrote any dialogue, I wanted to make sure that I incorporated some form of localization. Now, as localization goes, there's actually a great tutorial by Unity themselves, but the way that they had set it up wasn't the best. So I'll show you what they had, right? So if you went to Window, and then you went to Localized Text Editor, and this would be created if you followed their tutorial. You could load data, you can load the items, and right now I don't have any items in there. I haven't created anything. So it's just displaying that I haven't had anything. And then you would just have to write in the key, and you could just write whatever you wanted, and then give it a value, and then you could save that. But then that is a pain, because if you're gonna have a lot of dialogue in your game, you're gonna constantly be looking at this, and then you're gonna have to remember all these keys. You're gonna have to then remember how to put them into your game logic. That is not good for anybody. That is a snail's pace at figuring this out. So I was like, hell no. I'm not doing it that way. I was gonna create something a little bit more intense. I wanted to create a custom inspector that was gonna basically do everything for me. You would create the initial key, and then it would manage all other keys that it adds onto that for you. And it'll get them and load them. You won't even have to worry about it. So that's what my idea was. And I needed to incorporate it in a way that I can add in dialogue while also changing faces, adding sounds, and a couple other various things. So dialogue at its core is just a bunch of strings that you create before the game is ever ran. And because we're never going to be modifying these values during runtime, it actually is a great idea for us to use scriptable objects for this. And that's exactly what I did. If I was to go and create a new dialogue, I will just call this test 1. So for this, generally what I plan on doing is just calling it what the object is. So I'm just going to call this key test 1, and then I'm going to hit save. And then you can see that it's loaded up in here. That's our key, and it's unchangeable. We have some options for our dialogue to save and delete all. We have an option for adding dialogue, adding choices, deleting dialogue, and deleting choices, but we'll get into all that in a second. The first thing you're gonna notice is it requires a character. Now, this was something that I was going back and forth with a few times, because originally I had it set so you had to set every time. You would have to set the face set, you'd have to set the orientation, whether it was on the left or the right, you would have to give it a name, and then you'd have to give it a string. But what happened is that took up so much space on the inspector, I just could not stand it. So if we were to come over here, we can create what I put down as a character. So now we're gonna call him Jumbo. And if we were to edit the values, it requires that we give him a name, so let's just call this Jumbo. The face set, we need a sprite. So we give him a face set. So then we just save it, or we have to load in the JSON file, just like the other one, and then we can save the name. and then it'll save it as, and you can reference this as car jumbo. So if we go into the JSON file now, you can see what we've done. The key is listed here as car jumbo, and then the value will distribute jumbo. And so now in the game, when we run it, we'll load it into a temporary list, and it'll find this key, and then it'll place jumbo up here. So now when we come to the character, we can select either Chuck or Jumbo, and we'll start it off with Jumbo. And then it brings up a few options for us. We can add a text box, we can change the face, we can delete or play an audio clip. So let's add some text, and we're gonna just say, hey, I'm Jumbo. I'm so glad you're coming on this adventure with me. Now that Jumbo's said a few words, maybe we're gonna have Chuck jump in on this. So we would add another dialogue because we want another character to come and speak. So we would add another dialogue. We would grab Chuck and add some text. Let's just say, hey, don't forget about me. My name is, I can't type, Chuck. My name is Chuck. So let's go add dialogue, and we'll give it to Jumbo. And what you'll notice here on the third one is that it gives us an extra element that we can manipulate, because this is where a third character could come into the mix. And you get to decide whether or not he's on the left or the right. So whether or not he's gonna be on right here or right here. Right now we only have two characters, so it really doesn't make any sense for Jumbo to suddenly be over here, because his other face set would be here still. So let's just put him on the left where he was. Now let's add some text and just be like, shut up, Chuck. You're annoying. Why not? And then let's say, I don't have any other really good face sets, but let's do a change the face just so you can see what would happen. So it would bring up this object where you can change the face. Let's just give it this one, why not? Just to show that it works. These will not be in the game. It's just for me to get multiple face sets. And why I'm changing face sets is it's just going to, I'm gonna have a list of different facial expressions, I should say. It's not to change it to another character, it is just to change their emotion, basically. And then if we were to give it some text, it would be like, just changed faces. Okay, so let's just save that. So just showing you real quick that when I hit save, you can see that all these values are in the JSON file. And the way that it does it is, at the beginning we showed that it sets it to the key to be test1, but then it looks at the different elements of the arrays. It's a multi-dimensional array, so it goes test1, and then it's at the first array at 0, and then it's at number 0 at the secondary array, and it'll just increment that. So like 0, 1, and then we went to Chuck's conversation right here, so we went to test1 at 1, 0 for hey, don't forget about me, and then so on and so on, and then so it can just go on forever. So going back, now I can test it and show you guys that it's actually working, and I'm not just pulling your leg here. So if we were to go and it's just on a trigger right now. So if we went over here, it would pop up, it gives us the correct face set and his name, Jumbo, and it says, hi, I'm Jumbo. I'm so glad you're coming on this adventure with me. And then it's Chuck pops up over here. He's a little bit transparent at this point, and he says, hey, don't forget about me. My name is Chuck. Shut up, Chuck, you're annoying. And then you can see that he changed faces, and then the dialogue should end after that, and the conversation is over. So that all on itself is a pretty good and well-developed dialogue system, but it could be better, right? So there's a few other things that we like to incorporate with dialogue systems, and this is the ability to choose between different dialogue paths, basically. A lot of indie developers will use these node-based systems, but node-based systems are really annoying, and I hate them. Using nodes at all drives me nuts. There's a few examples where it's okay, like the animation system for Unity, but other than that, I try and stay away from them. So the way that I decided to do it instead was to create separate objects that can link to other objects whenever you want. When you load into a conversation, it'll go through the entire conversation, and then at the very end, you can add choices. And those choices will load other conversations and you can have them link back. You can have it repeat the whole conversation. It doesn't matter. It branches out into any way that you could possibly think of without having to think about all these lines and having one big graph that's just a big fat mess. No thank you. You can just add a choice, and then it gives you an option. So this is the text that would display for option 1, and then you can add in your dialogue object. So you can have up to 4 choices. We're not going to do that for this example. The last text in the object is what's going to be displayed while these are also displayed. So let's make something that makes sense. So let's add a text box and say, hey, do you want ice cream? Question mark. So then we can just say, I'd love some, or no way, sounds gross, why not? Oh, it'll do the same conversation as before, just change faces. Hey, do you want ice cream, right? And then it comes up with 2 options, and you can choose between them. And we put it on I'd love some, so if I do I'd love some, and then it's like, here's your ice cream. Pretty simple. So we can do choices as well. At the end of your game, when you want to localize your text, you would get a blank JSON file, and you need to bring over the values. So what we would do is we would come to the English version, and you would just copy the entire thing over, okay? And then you would just paste it in. And from here, you could go in, and this is going to be every text element in your entire game, and you would just change every one of these values to its counterpart in the language that you're going for. So now when we play, we'll first see the English version of it, like we have before. So, hey, I'm Jumbo. I'm so glad you're coming on this adventure with me. And then if we were to go to our localization manager and we were to switch the language to Spanish, and we were to hit play again, you will see it loading in the correct text. So now it says, hola, soy Jumbo, and then estoy tan contento. I'm not going to try and pronounce this. I don't know Spanish, but you can see that it puts in the words that we had translated, and it even has the inline commands alongside it. So yeah, this is just the system I've been working on for the last month. It's more in depth than you probably would have considered. There's a lot of different scripts that went into it, but what I'm trying to showcase to you guys is that you really need to focus on localization from the very beginning in your games. Otherwise, at the end, you're really gonna struggle on trying to find all the text and switching it over into another language. And yes, it is true, you may never want to localize it, but for me, I wanted to future-proof my game. What's even better is I can take everything that I've made here and I can incorporate it in every project from here on out. So you really only have to build it once and then you get it forever. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that you found it useful and that I inspired you guys to go in and jump into localization all on your own. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.